I am Dominic. Nice to have you tuned in again. We are still here. Where else should we be? In our little annex apartment in our WC. We have already done quite a bit. Sealed completely, fine plaster on the walls. So here again, a few videos have already been shown. Right here we have our StrongWall, which is what it's about now. In XL attached to a shower back wall. In the same design in a smaller format, the material is now going on the walls. It's waterproof, so you don't need to worry. Very easy to process. So a great alternative to tiles, especially for DIY simple. What you always need are angles, a spirit level. Ideally, we have a laser, that's always the best. In case the floor is a bit uneven somewhere, you can determine that precisely. All around, that's crucial. Pencil, caulking gun, our assembly adhesive. We use it to stick these to the wall, buy it here. It is approved for this purpose. Just don't use material, because that can potentially quickly go wrong. Check out Planeo D, you'll find everything there. Things like garden fences, terraces. The panels are now doing quite well. That's why we decided to make a video about it online. As mentioned, they are super easy to work with. I always have a jigsaw and miter saw with me, so how do we start now? First measure, of course. Sure, how do I get out of here? So I have already set up the laser. Yes, always finish with a full panel at the top. That means we will cut something off at the bottom. We've already calculated that. I have already made a mark and set it up with the laser so that we need to reach this height. Now we will draw it all the way around here once. Mark it once and measure it again. It might be that there's a piece down there that's 22 centimeters. It could be that in the back corner it's 22.5. The important thing is that everything is level. That is the most important thing. When you have the first rows, I'll say later, glued, then build on them with the others. It's really just outline, and it's a mistake because it is interlocked. If you don't have a laser, simply get this height and do it. I just wanted to show you. If you have that, then mark it by hand. Then also, there is absolutely no problem. Most key thing here is when we make a cross joint here to measure everything precisely beforehand. As I said, I also drew the line in for myself so that I have a reference point. Then again on the next line with the laser, I have consistency. Alignment matters. That means first cut roughly, first check if they fit, and then please only glue, otherwise you'll have a mess later. Spaces. Also very important to leave about 4 millimeters of space everywhere to fix components or in the corners to the floor. Also very crucial, so always use spacer plates. So, and here we have the XL board now. It also has the groove here, it just fits in here. Into the tongue of the wall board. We first insert it right here. Look, the joint here is already closed. Here we don't have a joint pattern like with the others. And definitely the next one as well. Insert it gently sideways here. Close and then down. Carefully. This automatically creates a joint here as well. Press firmly. As I said, this is a very simple system. And as mentioned, the important thing here is to really cut beforehand. Look at the details and then measure carefully. cut out here. When I have something like this, literally, I always do it as precisely as possible. First, you mark the board to see how it would fit there. Everyone can do this in their own way. You can either do it like this now, by simply drawing a cross at the center, or you take the outer edge carefully. The board, that's how it will fit in later. So now I have my measurement here. I wanted to note, if you have dark boards, the pencil line is very hard to see on them. I always have a colored pencil, best for marking on the board. The sun is shining outside. When you're cutting and the sun is blazing down on it, depending on how the light falls, you can hardly see the pencil line. That's a little tip if you work with dark materials. This is now a 60-40 mils attachment. They come sizes. You should check if you have it, but that's the standard for cans. It just happens to everyone sometimes. So now it's clear, first check before gluing simply. It may also shift by 2 millimeters, just a little bit. That's always because of the joint edge distance. It can happen if a millimeter shifts. It's not a big deal. Here we had it fitting, don't despair. Always pay attention to the cross joint here. It can always happen when you insert them from above and then push them in. That it shifts by 1 or 2 millimeters again. Always keep an eye on it, especially during assembly. Because the adhesive is fresh, I can still do whatever I want. In 20 minutes, I won't be able to move it anymore. It sets very quickly indeed. So when I'm gluing the last row now, you have to work quite precisely, I would say. But here you have to work very precisely. There needs to be an exact straight cut here, precisely. Because you reach the finishing profile. I insert it directly afterwards, right here after I freshly glued it. That's why I would now, when using the adhesive, do it on the panels. I know that later my rails will be up here, so I'll just make a small bead here. In an emergency, you can still adjust it. I don't want any adhesive on the surface. White on black, that's not so nice, perhaps. Small piece again, which I always use to check what I have here. I also need to know the distance. Here in the niche, if I want a flush shift, specifically to the niche, I check beforehand how much I need to cut away here, and it has to be damn straight. So everywhere you place these things, you need to work extremely cleanly. That means I will in the future, later, slide it in here. As a finish, the same up here. And then it is pushed in, right, like this. And here comes the long one in at the same time as gluing. Then I can still vary a little. Once the glue is dry, I have no more chance. This way I can still adjust a bit, optimize. In case you're wondering, the ones lying here, I've already cut them all. Everywhere on top, the edge is already cut so that I can fit the profile exactly flush with the old edge. As a finish, and then it looks neat. Above all, it's simple, always this lip on top. I don't want to leave it visible like this. That's why the profile finish. And as I said, if I were to attach the profile this now, I would always see the gray part of the lip here. And that doesn't look nice. That's why I cut away the lip. Now I'm just cutting the miter of the long piece. Place it on and then I'll adjust it with the other one. It's important to always cut the miter first and then set the counterpart. But it can still shift due to the saw blade, so that about 2 millimeters are missing. Then you have an annoying gap. I shouldn't talk too much. I don't want that to happen to me right away, but let's ignore that for now. Before I forget, for orientation, sure, I'm placing it here like this, but when I'm at the saw, I also like to make sure I know how I need to cut it. This will be cut off here like this. make a mark so that I know right away, We can quickly get confused when we're back at the saw. They're there, they're busy outside. Eugen, McGoss, and everyone, Alex and everyone. Making videos endlessly, I'm going crazy again. Check if everything is nice and flush, that it's really nice and clean here. And it already looks clean, and it's a very simple solution. In case you made a wrong cut here, let's say at this joint, and you can see a slight hint of a joint here. In an emergency, you can, when you seal it later with silicone, then tape it off a bit and pump something in there. That can always happen. And right now, I'm going to cut out the mitre here that sticks out a bit, and then I'll mark the mitre precisely here. Sort of. So now I need the other mitre, which means it goes in this direction. Also mark it for orientation. And that's how it should appear in the end. Look afterwards. And now here. Now I need a mitre. Neither here or there. Then we have exactly this point here. Oh yes, what's also very important is when you're cutting the mitre here, when you're cutting these that lie in the corners, then you need to place it on the mitre bed facing upwards. If you have a transition that continues downward and not sort of meets directly at the corner, you need to make an outside corner like this. Then you simply need to lay it flat on the mitre saw. This is also very crucial. You don't wonder why. plaster, which you still need to consider. We are painting our base with silicate because we are creating a mineral system. It's always quite good in the bathroom. Then I wouldn't necessarily use acrylic if possible. That can always cause cracks. It's somewhat brittle. We always like to use this material here, which is also available from other manufacturers, a kind of putty in a tube, and we are already pumping it out once. And then, as we move forward, we continue. Now it's time once again, indeed. The most beautiful part in a craftsman's life. We are finished in our bathroom. It looks really cozy here again. It wasn't difficult at all to work with our strong wall on the wall. Even with the very delicate joint, I think it looks really chic. Everyone who comes in here is impressed. Super easy installation, just slapped over the old tiles with a bit of assembly adhesive. Very easy to do it yourself. Take a look in our shop. We also have other brands and color tones. And if you choose something, you can also request free samples. You can get all at Planeo. Definitely check out DE again. And otherwise, feel free to leave us some comments. It always helps us. Give us a bit of feedback, and if you have any other questions, email us or call us. We have a super competent team at Planeo. And please don't forget to subscribe. Thumbs up, and we'll see you next time. Bye. See you later.